I was I just hurt my knee real bad. Oh.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'll be alright.
Okay.
Ice? Yeah, can I have some ice, please?
I'm gonna have some ice!
Well, that was not planned for. I gotta reiterate this. Oh, shit. A second ago I was doing some moves and I popped my knee. That wasn't planned on happening. Oh. So I wanted to talk about pure fun and total love. And originally I had been thinking not to have any kind of plan for what to do here today, and maybe I was not going to even talk about those things, but real briefly, the whole motivation behind speaking and putting this together was because over the last 6 years I've felt personally that the interactions I've been able to have with different individuals where the focus has been on fun have been the most rewarding and empowering experiences that I've been able to enjoy as an individual. And whether it came through music or through talking to someone, the feeling was consistent. And I would describe those feelings as pure fun and total love. And when setting up this lecture, we were this discussion, this talking, whatever it is that we want to consider, I was thinking about doing it later in the day, and then we thought, oh, it'd be good to do it first in the day. And I really appreciate everybody getting up relatively early in the midst of this to be here today. I really appreciate it, and I'm going to make this last night I was talking with friends of mine, and we figured out a couple different ways to describe some common situations that we can examine that show us that perhaps things are not as they seem. And the reason I'd like to use these two examples, or the reason I would like to illustrate the idea that things are not as they seem, is because if things are not as they seem and they seem bad, then we can just sort of set that aside as not necessarily how things really are. And I think a big part of the idea of pure fun is to be in a state of mind that allows you to reinterpret whatever's going on around you as something that isn't bad, that's something that isn't sad, something that's not making you mad, something that actually is full of fun. And it just comes down to awareness and what you choose to look at. So, for example, if you're walking down the street and your attention is called to a certain person that's walking down, maybe someone that you're not friends with, there's many visual cues that you could use to start summing up that person. But at the same time, you could use that opportunity of looking at that person as a chance to challenge your own points of view in summing them up. Someone might have a certain hairstyle, and you might think that that hairstyle means they're going to act a certain way, or that they listen to a certain kind of music, or that they have certain kinds of friends, or that they talk a certain way. But really, just upon seeing them, there's really no way to know what they are. And if they had a hairstyle or a kind of clothing maybe that you decided you didn't like and that was annoying, perhaps that was what you ended up choosing to focus on. And if you had focused on, or if we focused on something other than that, you could find something that was quite pleasant. And the idea, I think, of pure fun is to always be in this state of mind where you're bringing your attention to what is fun and feels good over what you think is upsetting or frustrating. Well, I think I'll try to come back to that in a few minutes. What I'd like to go down to is these two ideas I wanted to use to examine that things maybe not are as they seem. And the two ways I'd like to do it is one is through distance, meaning the space that appears to be in between objects, like me and you right now, or you and the person next to you, or the doors from here, whatever distances. And then the other one will be time, the distance that time seems to create from past to present, from today till tomorrow, etc. The way that the distance in space can work, and we were looking at this last night. You guys seen those mockingbirds about town? They have that call.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We saw a tree full of them, and it was about a half block away. It was just across the street. And then we were whistling our whistle, and they did start talking and calling back. And we thought, okay, well, they're about 50 feet away. And the idea is that perhaps there really is no distance between things at all. That it's one giant organism, or one giant life form, or one solid object, or maybe not even an organization of molecules that we can even think of. Maybe it's just one complete experience. And although it seems like that pole is far away from me, or these birds across the street were across the street, maybe they were actually so close that I couldn't even realize it. And you think, well, how can you say that the pole is clearly not by me? But if we were standing on a crane right now, just maybe 100 feet up in the air, looking down, the distance between me and that pole from the person's point of view in the crane would be much closer. It wouldn't be able to walk the distance. It would be like that big of a distance. And then if you pulled out further from that, let's say the top of a airplane view, you wouldn't be able to separate the distance at all. In fact, it would just look like one solid thing. And if you pulled out farther from there, you would eventually just see the entire Earth. And it would be very hard to distinguish what was separate from what was combined. And I thought that was a really easy way to see how the distance between things can be either exaggerated from our point of view, or exaggerated from the other point of view. You can think things are very close together that in fact not. The other way I wanted to use was time. And the way that time you could do it is, you'd say, well, 10 years ago. In one way it feels really long. It's 10 years amount of time. It goes by fast. It's many, many days and many hours and many minutes. Or you could say 10 years went by very quick. I can think back to 10 years ago and it seemed like nothing. Especially if we think about, oh wow, well, imagine how long ago it's been since human civilization started, several thousand years. Well, that really makes the last 10 years seem actually very insignificant. And then if you zoom out even further and say, well, let's think of the time it would take to get to the sun. Many thousands of years. And then 10 years seems even smaller. And eventually, if you thought of the age of the universe and went back, zoomed out that far, you'd see that 10 years, you can't even start to fathom the actual length of that time. So what I'm trying to really attempting to illustrate by both those ideas, the distance and time, is that maybe it's just up to our interpretation of how far away these things are, how long something takes. And that's why you can say, well, 5 minutes seemed like an eternity, or 5 minutes seemed like 5 hours, or 5 minutes seemed like 5 minutes, or 5 minutes went by like the time it takes for a second to go by. And all this is not to say that there isn't distance between me and the pole, or me and those birds. It's not to say that 10 years isn't 10 years. It's just to say that we have some amount of input in interpreting how these things work. And from that point on, I would like to again say that what it puts us in is a position of power. That we're not victims of circumstance. That there's not outside forces that dictate how we think of things. The only way that we are able to process information is by our own choices of how we do it. A really good example of that, I think, is when we speak about what we have to do. And for example, someone that maybe come here today, when I said I can't come to the rest of the day, and I just say why? I say, well, I have to go to work. You have to go. Well, someone's, you have a responsibility. Yeah, I gotta pay rent, I gotta pay bills, I have to do it. But you also have to. You're choosing it. Yeah, but it's not that simple. You know, you gotta, the way we're gonna do what you have to do, either there's responsibilities or otherwise you screw up. Well, then you're choosing to follow the responsibilities. Not ever a situation where we don't have, where we're not doing what we want to do. That's how I've been thinking about it. And it's been interesting just to catch myself saying, oh, I can't meet at that time, I have this to do. I have to go and do this. And then I think, well, no. I'm not going to meet at that time because I'm going to choose to go do this other thing. And all of a sudden the power's back in my hand, and I can't blame some other circumstance, some situation. Same idea about good luck and bad luck. Some say, oh, it's just I got very lucky. You can be fortunate and grateful for good fortune, which could be like luck, but some say the harder you work, the better luck you have. Some say that there is no luck, and then some people are able to also use situations that seem out of their control as a means of excusing or eliminating their responsibilities. So the whole idea is to try to empower ourselves with our own existence. And I think that's what comes back to pure fun. We choose to have fun. The people that came here today came to have a whole day of fun when there was an endless amount of other things to do. But the choices were made. I chose to come here. I didn't have to come here. I wanted to come here. It gives me pleasure to be able to follow through on what feels good. And so if we take that attitude and apply it to everything and use that, the discipline, use our awareness, our ability to think about what we're thinking about, and say, oh, there's not outside forces, and all of a sudden we can do essentially whatever we want. And then the argument is, well, no matter how much I want to lift a car over my head, I can't lift a car over my head. But that's sort of beside the point, because you probably could if you trained through many, many years and bulked up. Okay. So, can you turn the music off if it's playing?